There are 35 people on death row in South Carolina. Fred Singleton, 40 years on death row. Elizabeth C. Lominick, 73 years old, was essayed by Singleton after he broke into her house, killed her, and stole her belongings. The widow's body was discovered strangled with a bed sheet in the bedroom of her Newberry County home on September 9, 1982, by two sisters and a niece. Singleton had roughly $100 belonging to the victim in his pockets when he was apprehended in Georgetown County, along with gold and diamond jewelry. The victim's vehicle was also located. Singleton's fingerprints were discovered on the car and the screen of Mrs. Lominick's bathroom window. James William Wilson, 34 years on death row. He killed 2 children and wounded 9 other people during an elementary school shooting spree. Wilson, who was 20 years old at the time, was the gunman in the 1988 Oakland elementary school shooting. Wilson acknowledged bringing a loaded gun into the school. Tequila Thomas and Shaquilla Bradley, 2 8-year-olds, were killed when he opened fire in a 3rd-grade classroom after reloading his gun in a lavatory. During the brawl, 7 other students and 2 teachers were hurt. Wilson appeared to target kids who shouted in terror, according to witnesses. Mitchell Carlton Sims, 34 years on death row. Sims became enraged with the national chain of Domino's pizza shops in a strange and persistent way. The hatred might have sprung from his own job with the chain, which he had left in the autumn of 1985. On December 3, 1985, Sims broke into the Domino's restaurant in Hanahan, South Carolina, where he had just finished employment. He tortured both of the employees before shooting them both to death. One victim was instantly murdered, while the other, who had been shot 4 times, made it to a police station and identified Sims as the shooter before passing out. When his second victim passed away a week later, Sims and his girlfriend, Ruby Paget, were already in Glendale, California, plotting their next crime. Sims had a Domino's pizza delivered to his motel room on December 10th. Deliveryman John Harrington arrived. He was undressed, choked with a washcloth, and drowned in the tub. Sims went to the restaurant, and he put on the dead man's uniform, stole from its safe, and left 2 employees chained in the freezer, unable to move and having to stand on tiptoe to keep them from hanging themselves. By December 11, Sims and Paget were holed up in Las Vegas when he checked into a budget motel under the name of Jeff Richardson. After Harrington's stolen truck was found in a casino parking lot on December 21st, both suspects were taken into custody on Christmas morning as a result of widespread media coverage. Maurice Hughes, 28 years on death row. The state of South Carolina sentenced him to death for the murder of a police officer. Hughes shot and killed York County Sheriff's Deputy Brent McCants during a traffic stop, according to court filings. In the restaurant parking lot in Charlotte, North Carolina, on September 25, 1992, 2 college students were approached by Hughes and Eric Forney, who were carrying a gun, and their vehicle was taken. Officer McCants stopped the 2 guys for driving without headlights when they got to Rock Hill. He was shot multiple times and had his police-issue walkie-talkie removed from his belt. Johnny Olandis Bennett, 28 years on death row. He received a death sentence for kidnapping and murder. Court records state that Johnny Olandis Bennett abducted Benton Smith, killed him after forcing him to hand over his unemployment check. On Tuesday, November 27, 1990, 24-year-old Benton Smith disappeared. He and Bennett were last spotted leaving his home in Gaston, South Carolina, Happytown neighborhood. Traveling to cash victim's $147 unemployment check, the 2 departed in the victim's car. At 11:56 a.m., the victim cashed his check, and this was the last time he was seen alive. Later that day, Bennett was spotted driving the victim's car and giving several items to friends. The victim's vehicle was later discovered outside Bennett's mother's workplace, which was a school. Bennett led authorities to the victim's body close to his sister's house after making a series of contradictory claims to them and ultimately admitting to the murder. 70 to 75 stab wounds, mostly to the victim's head, neck, and upper back, were discovered during an autopsy. The wounds were caused by a Phillips head screwdriver. Internal bleeding or asphyxiation as a result of the stab wounds was the cause of death. Donnie Council, 27 years on death row. Elizabeth Gatty, 72 years old, was slain by Donnie Council after she was essayed, beaten, and robbed in her Bath home. 4 years later, he was found guilty and given the death penalty. She had been duct taped from her forehead to her neck when she was discovered, lying up beneath a sheet or spread. After Council fed Gatty a mixture of household cleansers, she spent hours strapped to the floor of her basement. In less than 2 hours, a jury determined that Donnie Council ought to be put to death. Bobby Wayne Stone, 26 years on death row. On February 26, 1996, Stone bought a .22 caliber semi-automatic handgun and also a shotgun. He shot the firearms and drank beer while wandering through the woods for the rest of the day. Stone ended up in Ruth Griffith's property later that day. He said that Griffith and he were old drinking buddies in his police testimony. Griffith denied that, saying that the only reason she knew Stone was because he had dated her niece in the past and had visited her home to pick her up. When Stone arrived at the residence, Mary Ruth McLeod, Griffith's adult daughter, who lived with Griffith, was there. Stone was in the yard with his weapons and a beer can when McLeod asked him to leave. The man obeyed, but McLeod was already on the phone with 911. At 6:06 p.m., Sergeant Charles Kubala arrived at Griffith's residence. As Stone has already made his way back to the woods, Sergeant Kubala examined the area, had a conversation with McLeod and Griffith, and then departed. Shortly after, Griffith heard gunfire in her backyard, followed by a knock on her side porch's inner door. Griffith called her neighbor, Landro Taylor, after McLeod had left the house, and Taylor came over and dialed 911 from inside Griffith's house. Sergeant Kubala answered the call again, showing up at 7:07 p.m. Stone remained on the side porch, his weapon in his hand, and pounding on the door. While Sergeant Kubala proceeded around the house toward the side porch, Taylor and Griffith stayed inside. Taylor and Griffith heard someone cry "halt" or "hold it" from inside, and then 3 or 4 gunshots were heard right away. Sergeant Kubala was hit by Stone twice, once in the neck and once in the ear. He passed away at the site. Following several hours of searching, Stone was discovered by Sumter County Sheriff's officer in the woods, lying still between 2 logs with the murder weapon under his body. Stone admitted to the shooting in a statement he made early the next morning. However, he said the gun just went off and then he ran away. He insisted it was an accident. Norman Starnes, 26 years on death row. Norman killed 2 men. The sheriff's department was notified that these 2 men were missing. A local television station produced a piece about them. Norman Starnes was one of the individuals they had interviews with. He implored anyone with knowledge on their disappearance to get in touch with the sheriff's department. Norman knew where they were at all times during that interview. When he threatened to kill his girlfriend, his luck ran out, and that's when she contacted the police. The couple had been at a nearby watering hole shooting pool the night the 2 men went missing. After arriving at Norman's house, the 2 men were shot by him. Norman then proceeded to get a friend to assist him in transporting the dead to an uncle's home in the adjacent county. A few days after he buried the men, his uncle called him to tell him that the smell was becoming too strong and that he needed to relocate the remains. Norman did just that, but the girlfriend told the police everything, so he was apprehended. Gary Terry, 26 years on death row. On May 24, 1994, Uri Jackson, then 47 years old, was discovered dead from physical assault at her Lexington County residence. The telephone wires had been removed from the phone box, and the window on her home's carport door had been broken out. The victim's body was discovered in the living room, mostly naked, and she had also been assayed. She suffered many head injuries from blunt trauma in addition to multiple injuries from defensive wounds. Blunt trauma with a skull fracture and brain damage was the cause of death. Terry was found guilty and sentenced to death for the murder. Bion Alexe, 25 years on death row. The state of South Carolina sentenced him to death for the murder of a police officer. A white Ford Mustang with a Delaware license plate was pulled over on New Year's Eve 1997 by South Carolina Highway Patrol Sergeant Franklin Lingard for speeding on Interstate 95. As Sergeant Lingard got close to the Mustang's driver's side, a gunshot fired from within the vehicle killed him. Richard Bernard Moore, 22 years on death row. Moore was sentenced to death in South Carolina for the murder of convenience store clerk James Mahoney in 1999. Moore was convicted of first-degree murder, armed robbery, and possession of a weapon during a violent crime. He was accused of shooting Mahoney twice in the head during the robbery at the store where Mahoney worked. Moore's case has gone through various appeals and legal proceedings over the years. Freddy Eugene Owens, 20 years on death row. Owens is on death row for his involvement in the murders of two convenience store clerks during a robbery in 1997. Owens, along with two co-defendants, entered the convenience store in Conway, South Carolina, and fatally shot the two clerks, Irene Graves and James Clyburn. Owens was convicted of murder, armed robbery, and other charges related to the crime. He was sentenced to death in 1999. Lenski Allen Cottrell, 18 years on death row. Cottrell was sentenced to death in South Carolina for his involvement in the murder of Myrtle Beach police officer Joe McGarry in 2002. Cottrell was convicted of shooting Officer McGarry during a traffic stop. The prosecution argued that Cottrell and his accomplice Jermaine Johnson were involved in drug trafficking and shot Officer McGarry to avoid arrest. Jerry Buck Enman, 17 years on death row. Enman was sentenced to death row in South Carolina for the murder of Clemson University student Tiffany Marie Sowers in 2006. Enman abducted Sowers from her apartment, essayed her, and then strangled her to death. He later confessed to the crime and was convicted of first-degree murder, kidnapping, and essay, among other charges leading to his death sentence. Stephen Kristoff Stanko, 17 years on death row. Stanko was sentenced to death in South Carolina for the murders of Laura Ling and Henry Lee Turner in 2005. He killed Ling and Turner at Ling's home in Mount Pleasant, South Carolina. He was convicted of murder, burglary, and other charges related to the crime. Stanko's case gained significant media attention due to its brutality and the circumstances surrounding the murders. James Robertson, 24 years on death row. 2 days before Thanksgiving in 1997, on November 25th, Earl and Terry Robertson, both 49, were discovered brutally murdered inside their Rock Hill, North Carolina home. Rock Hill is a thriving suburb and college town of Charlotte. They were law-abiding, devout, and family-oriented individuals. However, someone had wanted them dead enough to use a claw hammer to break Earl's skull and cut Terry's throat. James Jimmy Robertson, 21 years old at the time, the couple's eldest son, who had just returned to live with his parents, was the target of immediate suspicion. Robertson had taken a bad turn after earning honors in high school, falling out of college and descending into drug and alcohol addiction and small-time crime. He called his teenage girlfriend Meredith Moon in the early hours of November 25th and asked her to come over. Robertson told her when she arrived that he was going to kill his parents that day. What had driven a young man who had previously shown promise to kill his parents in cold blood? Was it a greedy longing for his portion of a $2.2 million inheritance, as the prosecution claimed? James Robertson's own grandmother stated he'd be better put off to sleep when speaking with a newspaper reporter about him. In 1999, a jury sentenced Robertson to death. Maran Balman, 21 years on death row. Balman killed a young mother from Orangeburg in 2001 with a .38 caliber handgun and set her body on fire because she owed him money. The burnt-out body of Candy Martin was discovered in the trunk of her car on February 17, 2001. She had been shot to death before being placed in the trunk. Mikol Dean Mii, 19 years on death row. Mikol Dean Mii entered a guilty plea to the July 2004 shooting death of Orangeburg Public Safety Captain James Myers, along with the burning of his corpse. According to the prosecution, he drove off in Myers's unmarked police vehicle, which was fully equipped with body armor, weapons, and ammo. Following the murder, a manhunt that covered a large portion of the southeast was launched, and 3 days later, Mii was apprehended at Satellite Beach, Florida, some 20 miles south of Cape Canaveral. According to the authorities, Mii aimed a powerful rifle he had taken from the truck at the cops, dropped the weapon, and attempted to flee. After about 20 minutes, he was apprehended. Mii was freed from a Virginia jail where he was serving a sentence for beating an apartment building maintenance supervisor 2 months prior to the crime. The officials from Virginia who were there at Mahdi's 1998 arrest stated that the then 15-year-old Mahdi made a vow to kill a police officer before he died, and he was later condemned to death in South Carolina. James Bryant, 19 years on death row. As Bryant was being placed under arrest in June 2000 for driving with a suspended license, Corporal Dennis Liddon of the Horry County Police Department was abruptly turned around and forced to the ground by Bryant. Bryant hit Corporal Liddon badly on the head during the struggle, taking the officer's duty belt containing Liddon's flashlight and weapon magazine. Bryant grabbed his weapon out of his holster and gave him a close-range headshot after knocking the officer out. Following his departure, Bryant left Corporal Liddon's body where it had fallen and took the weapon and pistol magazine with him. Horry County law authorities captured Bryant the following day after a lengthy manhunt. Ron ONeal Finley, 16 years on death row. Finley attempted to rob an automated teller machine in the plant in August 2003, shooting Selectron security guard Walter Sykes Sr. twice. Walter Sykes was blessed with a devoted wife, 4 children, and a great military career. The murder security footage was shown to the jury. Sykes is seen performing his night shift on the tape. He allows Ron Finley, a former employee, to use the ATM. A few moments later, Finley is seen scanning the room with what appears to be a gun in his hand. Finley enters Sykes' workspace and he shoots Sykes in the face and neck, according to investigators. Finley then introduces an accomplice who is holding a red gas can. The room catches fire as Finley carries the gas can inside the office where Sykes is battling gunshot wounds. Finley runs away. Subsequently, Sykes was seen fleeing the building while he was on fire. He passed away shortly after. Prosecutors displayed the jurors his charred uniform, which had a strong gasoline odor. Louis Michael Winkler, 15 years on death row. Winkler kidnapped and essayed Rebecca Granger on October 10, 2005, 5 months before she was murdered. That evening, Winkler's car was spotted behind the Seacoast Medical Center. Rebecca's car was found off the road in some trees and appeared to have been wrecked. There was blood on both of the victim's car seats, around the center console, and on the interior panel of the passenger's side door. The Horry County Police Department activated its dog team in an attempt to locate 2 missing people. Rebecca was later found next to Stevens Crossroads, which is where the magistrate's complex and library is located. Phyllis Richardson arrived at the parking lot at Stevens Crossroads around 7:30 a.m. on October 11, 2005, and saw a woman walking in the parking lot being followed by a man. Richardson noted the woman looked distraught and was acting confused, and that the man's hands were in the air as if he were raging and irritated. Shortly after Richardson entered her office, she saw the woman from the parking lot on the phone in her office building. The woman's hair was matted and tangled with some bald spots. Richardson later learned the woman making the call was Rebecca Granger. Curtis Thompson was the first officer to arrive at the building and noticed some of Rebecca's hair looked like it had been ripped out, and she had black eyes, abrasions, and other scratches. The victim was transported to Seacoast by EMS, where Lisa Gore, a nurse, tended to Rebecca and noted her injuries to the left eye, some swelling in the jaw area, bruising around the neck, a fractured nose, an upper lip injury, redness under her right eye, corneal abrasions, multiple bruises and contusions, a bite mark to the face, and a large amount of hair removed from her head. An assay kit was collected from her, and the DNA matched Winkler's. On October 11, 2005, Winkler was arrested for criminal sexual conduct, first-degree assault, and battery with intent to kill, and kidnapping. Bond was initially denied. However, at a second bond hearing, bond was set at $150,000, and he was required to wear an electronic monitor while out on bond. At a third hearing, Winkler's bond was amended to allow him to remove his electronic monitor for 2 hours, so he could seek employment between the hours of 4 p.m. and 6 p.m. Winkler was out on jail on bond on the day Rebecca was murdered. At around 5:30 p.m. on March 6, 2006, he kicked in the door to Rebecca's condominium. He knocked her son, Jonathan, onto the ground and then shot her once in the face at point-blank range. According to the forensic pathologist who conducted the autopsy, Death occurred instantly. Winkler hid in the woods, but he was caught 2 weeks later. Andres Antonio Torres, 14 years on death row. Torres was sentenced to death for his conviction of 2 counts of double homicide in connection with the beating murders of Ray and Ann Emery in their Drayton home in May 2007. Ray Emery was sleeping when Torres broke into the house with a hammer and gave him a blow to the back of the head. Ann Emery was essayed by Torres at some point before she was slain. Torres attempted to set the house on fire by turning on the oven and stove burners while standing over the victims and removing jewelry and other belongings from the residence. He then drenched the Emerys with gasoline. After driving Ray Emery's van from the scene of the crime, Torres crashed the car in Union County. Then Torres lied and claimed that his wife was in labor and that he had to travel to Spartanburg. Torres was single and does not have any kids. Jerome Jenkins, 5 years on death row. Jenkins was given the death penalty by a jury for the robbery that killed a Conway convenience store employee in January 2015. A pleading attorney for Jenkins pointed out that all the men in his family were either dead or incarcerated. Bella Paruchuri was shot by Jenkins as she left the business after the employee gave up the cash, according to prosecutor Jimmy Richardson. Jenkins was described as a cold-blooded killer. Timothy Jones, 5 years on death row. Jones was convicted of killing his 5 children and sentenced to death in June 2019. Timothy Jones met Amber Kaiser, a Pennsylvania native in Chicago. In June 2004, 22-year-old Jones married 18-year-old Kaiser in DuPage County, Illinois. Amber Jones gave birth to 5 children: Mara, born in Pennsylvania, Elias and Nathan, born in Mississippi, and Gabriel and Abigail, born in South Carolina. The couple separated for 2 weeks in May 2012, and according to Jones's divorce lawyer, when Jones returned to their shared home, he discovered that his wife was having an affair with a 19-year-old neighbor. In 2011, the state's Department of Social Services opened an investigation into the family's residence after he also accused his wife of neglecting the children. Despite finding the house in a messy state, the investigators closed the case. Timothy Jones took the kids to live with his parents in Mississippi while the couple stayed separated. The couple finalized their divorce in October 2013. Timothy Jones was awarded custody, while Mrs. Jones only retained visitation rights and was required to be supervised by her husband. Jones picked up his 2 youngest children, Gabriel and Abigail, from a local daycare on Thursday, August 28, 2014, and his 3 oldest children, Mara, Elias, and Nathan, from Saxe Gotha Elementary School. At a Walmart in Lexington County that afternoon, Jones forcibly removed the 5 children from the car, a behavior for which he would subsequently face charges of illegal neglect. At 7:12 p.m., Amber Jones called and spoke with Nathan, one of the boys. She was unable to get in touch with Jones or her kids after that. According to authorities, Jones killed his kids on August 28, most likely. He used bleach to mask the smell of rotting as he covered their bodies in black garbage bags. It's probable that the other kids were already deceased when Amber Jones spoke with Nathan on August 28, as Jones subsequently confessed to killing his kids in the family home on August 28. In the trial, prison officer Travis Presley testified that Jones had confessed to killing his oldest daughter after she had seen him kill one of her brothers. Jones claimed that after Nathan destroyed an electrical outlet and made him perform physical workouts, he lost his temper. According to Jones, he was inspired to kill the others after he found his son dead in bed. Jones admitted in his confession to have hurt the child in an attempt to get the youngster to explain what had happened to the outlets. Experts, however, discounted Jones's claim and said Nathan appeared to have been strangled to death. Jones acknowledged using a belt to strangle his younger children because he thought their necks were too little for his hands to handle safely. The mutilated remains were positively identified by Stephanie Stanley, an agent with expertise in DNA analysis, using complementary DNA strands discovered in Jones's residence and vehicle. Jones made a Labor Day trip at Dunkin' Donuts in Spartanburg, South Carolina on September 1st. He visited a Walmart in West Columbia on September 3rd. He bought many things, such as muriatic acid, saws, and big plastic bins, which he used to disfigure his kids. Authorities thought his kids were kept in the car's trunk. The dates of his children's absences were Friday, Monday, and Tuesday. Additionally, on September 3rd, Amber Jones called the police to report that she was unable to get in touch with her husband or her kids and that they had skipped the planned visit to Chick-fil-A. Black trash bags containing the bodies of Jones's 5 children were found off a rural dirt road close to Camden, Alabama. Jones was detained in his Cadillac Escalade on Saturday, September 6, 2014, at a regular Mississippi traffic checkpoint. Sammy Lewis Stokes, 24 years on death row. Stokes received a death sentence for killing Connie Snipes. He abducted her, assaulted her, essayed her, then killed her. Patty Sifret, Connie Snipes' mother-in-law, paid for the murder. In May 1998, Connie Snipes, 21 years old, was discovered dead in Branchville, almost completely naked. She'd taken 2 gunshot wounds to the head. Until the murder, Stokes and Snipes were acquaintances. Stokes received a $2,000 payment for Snipes' murder. Stokes alleged in his appeal that Thomas Sims, his defense lawyer, had been the prosecutor in a case against him 7 years prior and had never told the judge about it. At the sentencing phase of Stokes' trial, Sims requested the jury to spare Stokes the death punishment on the grounds that he had expressed regret. Brad Keith Sigmund, 21 years on death row. Sigmund broke into a house and used a baseball bat to kill Gladys and David Lark. Sigmund stole from the house and ran away. He and Rebecca Lark spent around 3 years together in an intimate relationship. She told Sigmund she didn't want to see him anymore while they were living together in her trailer. Gladys and David Lark, Rebecca's parents, shared a mobile home on the same plot of land as them. David gave Sigmund eviction papers and told him he had 2 weeks to vacate the property because Rebecca wanted him to. Following that, Rebecca moved in with her parents. Sigmund thought she had started a new relationship and she refused to get back together despite his pleas. He made the decision at some point that he would visit the Larks' residence. He planned to abduct her as soon as she got back home and vanish with her. Sigmund took a baseball bat from beneath his trailer and proceeded to the Larks' trailer. David instructed his wife to get him his rifle when he saw Sigmund, and Sigmund struck him multiple times in the back of the head with the bat. When Sigmund saw Gladys, he chased after her into the living room and struck her in the head multiple times. David was still moving, so he went back to the kitchen where he was lying and gave him several more blows with that bat. After that, he returned to Gladys, noticed that she was also still moving, and hit her repeatedly. After getting David's rifle, Sigmund took his time until Rebecca got back home. When she arrived, Sigmund snatched her car keys, brandished the revolver, and pushed her inside the vehicle. He was going to pick up his own vehicle and take Rebecca to North Carolina. She was able to exit the car nevertheless and made an attempt to flee. Sigmund stopped and pursued her, firing multiple shots at her. He realized he was out of ammo, so he returned to her car and drove off. Despite being hurt, Rebecca managed to survive the attack and informed the onlookers that Sigmund had claimed to have either killed or tied up her parents. When the bodies were found, police were called to the Larks' residence. A manhunt was launched, and after Sigmund called his mother, who was helping the police find him, he was eventually apprehended. After being caught without any issues and being detained by the Gatlinburg police, he confessed to killing the Larks and kidnapping and shooting Rebecca. He acknowledged that his plan was to kill Rebecca and then terminate his own life. John Richard Wood, 21 years on death row. The state of South Carolina sentenced Wood to death for the killing of State Trooper Eric Nicholson. While on patrol along I-85 in the Greenville area, Nicholson called the dispatcher to report that he was going to pull over a moped. Nicholson turned on his lights and siren, but Wood, still riding the moped, did not stop right away. After hearing Nicholson cry over the radio, 2 more troopers hurried to the site and discovered that Nicholson had been shot 5 times. Nicholson's car's driver's side glass was totally broken. His 2 handguns were safely tucked into their holsters. At the location, 8 shell casings were discovered. The murder of Nicholson was witnessed by multiple people. Witnesses said they saw a trooper with his lights and siren on following a motorbike. After exiting I-85 via the off-ramp, the moped turned right onto a frontage road. The trooper accelerated to move beside the moped as soon as the 2 cars entered the frontage road, then swerved to the left to stop at an angle against an elevated median to impede the scooter's forward motion. The moped stopped near the driver's side window. Wood stopped instantly, got to his feet over the moped, and reached up the driver's side window of Trooper Nicholson's vehicle. A few witnesses heard gunshots and observed Wood holding a weapon. Wood shot many times through Nicholson's car's driver's side window before backing up the moped, turning it around, and taking off quickly. Following the shooting, Wood was pursued by a few worried bystanders. He went into a parking lot and leaped into a Jeep's passenger seat, which was being driven by a female. After that, the residents gave the police the tag number. Wood started shooting at the pursuing police officers once they started pursuing the car. A gunshot splinter hit one officer in the face. He survived. Wood later stole a truck before being apprehended and placed under arrest. Tyree Alfonso Roberts, 20 years on death row. The state of South Carolina sentenced Roberts to death for the killing of 2 police officers. Tyree Roberts opened fire on Corporal A.J. Corson and Dana Tate of the Beaufort County Sheriff's Department as they were investigating a domestic disturbance at his home. Roberts killed both officers. He faced a capital murder charge. He opted to represent himself throughout the guilt or innocence phase of the trial, but 2 lawyers were still on standby to support him in court. Roberts told the trial court he would not be present at sentence if the jury found him guilty while they were still deliberating. Additionally, he made it clear that he didn't want his backup lawyers to offer a defense. Clinton Robert Northcutt, 20 years on death row. Robert Northcutt was convicted of killing his 4-month-old daughter. Brianna Nicole Northcutt was discovered dead in her crib inside the family's Platte Springs Roadhouse in January of 2001. Because she would not stop crying, the authorities claimed that her father killed her by beating her. Following the punishment, Northcutt's ex-wife Angie said, "My daughter is not coming back. I wish she was, and that's not going to change anything. All I can say is that I'm glad that it is over with." Angie and Robert Northcutt have another daughter as well. Haley was born a few months following Brianna's passing. Maran Lindsay, 19 years on death row. For Ruby Nell Lindsay's murder, the state of South Carolina condemned Lindsay to death. On September 18, 2002, Lindsay, then 31 years old, shot and killed Ruby Nell Lindsay while she and her 2 little children were hiding in the back seat of a friend's car in the Enman Police Department parking lot. Her husband approached the car Mrs. Lindsay was riding in and discharged his weapon 4 times while she was speaking with a 911 operator on the phone. Charles Kristoff Williams, 19 years on death row. With extra ammunition strapped to his knee and sawed-off shotgun under his arm, Williams entered the Bilo grocery shop on East North Street. Williams passed by clients and co-workers before discovering Miranda Williams attempting to flee through a storage space. Williams shot Miranda in the back as she tried to get away after being held captive for about 2 hours. The investigators discovered a blueprint of the store and the victim's work schedule in Williams's bedroom following the shooting. Quincy Allen, 18 years on death row. Quincy Jovan Allen killed 4 people between July and August in a crime spree in 2002. When Allen was incarcerated in federal prison for car theft, he was motivated to start committing crimes. He was persuaded by a fellow prisoner that he could acquire a job as a hitman for the mafia. Allen made the decision to purchase a shotgun and start training for his anticipated job after being freed. On July 7, 2002, at a bench in Finley Park in Columbia, South Carolina, Allen chose to attack 51-year-old James White, a homeless man, in order to practice shooting a shotgun. Though shot twice, White came out of the attack alive. On August 8, 2002, following an altercation with Texas Roadhouse employee Brian Marquez, Allen shot and killed Marquez's friend Jedediah Har, 22 years old, for attempting to break up the altercation. He followed Marquez to his house shortly after the fight and set fire to the porch. On August 9, 2002, Allen burned down another Texas Roadhouse employee's vehicle before picking another at random and setting it on fire a short while later. On August 12, 2002, Richard Calvin Hawks, 53 years old, and Robert Shane Rausch, 29 years old, were shot and killed by Allen during a heist at a Citgo petrol station in Dobson, North Carolina. On August 14, 2002, Allen was taken into custody in Mitchell County, Texas, as he slept in an abandoned vehicle. Stephen Corey Bryant, 18 years on death row. Bryant was sentenced to death for 3 murders. Over the course of a month, he shot 4 people, 3 of whom passed away from their wounds. Willard Teachem, 62 years old, Clifton Gainey, 26 years old, and Christopher Burgess, 35 years old, were his victims. Anthony Woods, 17 years on death row. The state of South Carolina sentenced Woods to death for killing Joan DuBose. On Monday, June 2, 2003, 53-year-old Joan DuBose, a teacher at Manning School, was last seen alive. A friend checked on her on Wednesday evening, June 4, 2003, after she did not return calls for many days. She was found laying on her bed, face up, with blood streaming from the side of her face. When that friend contacted 911, the cops discovered DuBose dead, with her right arm restrained and a sheet wrapped around her neck. Early on June 5, 2003, Woods was taken into custody in relation to a break-in that had occurred the night before at the home of Linda Taylor, a different woman from Clarendon County. In the end, it was discovered that a shoe print recovered from DuBose's bedroom floor was consistent with an imprint made from the shoes Woods was wearing when he was arrested. DuBose's bedsheet and mattress pad underwent DNA testing, and the results matched Woods' DNA profile. Stephen Vernon Bixby, 16 years on death row. The state of South Carolina convicted Bixby to death for the killing of 2 police officers. Threatening violence, Bixby was furious that a development project would possibly affect his land. Following the call to the police, there was a standoff involving Arthur Bixby, his wife Rita, and their son Stephen. State Constable Donnie Council and Deputy Sergeant Daniel Wilson of the Abbeville County Sheriff's Office were shot and killed. The 39-year-old Bixby allegedly told the previous girlfriend he was ready for a battle and had weapons and ammunition stacked in his parents' house, according to testimony given during his trial. He then boasted that he could have killed more people in a letter. William Dickerson, 14 years on death row. The state of South Carolina sentenced Dickerson to death for killing Gerard Roper. He believed that there was a video of Gerard Roper having relations with his girlfriend. Dickerson killed Roper after torturing and essaying him. Since their early years, Dickerson and Gerald Roper had been close friends, if not best friends. Ricky Lee Blackwell, 9 years on death row. He was sentenced to death for the murder of an 8-year-old child. The fact that his ex-wife was seeing someone new infuriated Blackwell. After Blackwell went to the pair's house, he shot Heather Brooks Center, 8 years old, in the head after putting her in a headlock. Blackwell fired 3 additional shots at the youngster. He was enraged that Brooks's father and his ex-wife were dating. This was an act of revenge, hoping he would make the child's father suffer. Please hit that subscribe button if you like my channel. See you next time. Bye bye.